what's your next move? Will you allow your fears to dictate your future, to limit your future? And how do you want to be remembered? You ask that question. You determine how you want to be remembered. You determine that. You determine how you want to be remembered. The power of choice or decision is the very thing that separates us from all of the other animals. And I just want you to know today that you don't have to live in a monochromatic world where everything is just black and white. There are three primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. And from those three options spring a rainbow of opportunities. And I just want to encourage you, live creatively. Life is going to give you problems. Nobody is exempt from problems. Your Christianity will not exempt you from problems. Money will not exempt you from problems. Wisdom will not exempt you from problems. Ask Solomon. You don't get an exemption from problems. You don't get an exemption from problems. Being educated does not exempt you from problems. Your back still is going to hurt. You get old enough, your knees, your hips. You don't get exempted from problems. Rich people end up falling and hurting themselves. You're not exempt from problems. You're not exempt. So you have to go back to your red and your yellow and your blue and create the rainbow of creativity with which you will live. Let me show you this little picture. Look at that. You know, the city council installed 30 metal poles to stop a homeless guy from sleeping here. He was sleeping right in front of that little store there. You see all those poles, and they put them there so he couldn't lay down in front of their door anymore. Let's show the next slide. Look how he answered. I have to give it to dude. You know, they should just let him alone. They should have built him a little condo there, installed him a bathroom. Listen, he didn't let that stop him. He rose above it. He rose above it. The average person would have just moved on to another place. He got him a box spring, got him a mattress, and I mean, my God, he had a high bed. Then he got him up off the ground. He didn't have to deal with water rushing in anymore. That's what I'm talking about, creatively thinking through your issues. High five somebody said, that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Here's what I would say to you. Questions demand decision. Questions demand decision. Like, who am I? That demands a decision. Why am I here? That demands a decision. What will I do about my future? That demands a decision. Questions demand decision. And let me give you some tips here. Whenever you are making major decisions, ask this. In the long run, will this make me better or worse? Because, you know, it's just a matter of time before you're going to be faced with a fork in the road and you're going to have to make a decision. You're going to have to make a decision as you get older, as your children get older, as your financial status changes, you will be forced to make decisions. As your health changes, you will be forced to make decisions. In the long run, will this make me better or worse? Ask that question. Ask this question, can I afford this? Please ask that question before you run off and get a new car. Can I afford this? Because who is it that builds a house without first counting the cost? Ask the question, can I afford this? Can I afford this? We don't think about that until we start getting the payments. Then ask this question, will this compromise my relationship with God? Will accepting this job compromise my relationship with God? With my being in relationship with this person compromise my relationship with God? Then ask this, will this negatively impact my family? It might be a good thing, but if it messes up your family, it's not worth it. Will this negatively impact my family? I remember a guy a number of years ago, and he had a tremendous opportunity over in the state of Texas. He was from Atlanta, he and I part of our local church, and moved over to Texas to take a high-paying job. When he got there, his family fell apart. Will this negatively impact my family? And then here's another question you need to ask. Will this be counterproductive to my health? Will this be counterproductive to my health? Because will it stress me to the degree that I'll end up with something happening in my body that I don't want to happen? Will it interfere with my ability to be able to sleep at night? Will this be counterproductive to my health? And then this question, is the timing right? It's not whether this is the right thing, is the timing right? Is this the right time? Am I prepared for what I prayed for? Is the timing right? Are the circumstances right? Are the other people in my life, is this right for them? Is this a right opportunity for you based on where your relationship is with your spouse or with your children or relatives or wherever you are with what God has called you to do in your life? Now here's some spiritual discernment questions that you need to ask. You need to have spiritual discernment. We're a spiritual people. So you don't want to just ask the practical wisdom question. You want to ask spiritual discernment question if God is leading you with something in your life. Ask questions like, is this in line with the principles of God's word? I mean, if somebody asks you to do something, is this in line with the principles of God's word? Here's another question. Has this been confirmed by others who know nothing about it? I mean, has it had supernatural confirmation? With what, I mean, they don't know anything about it, but yet God uses somebody who didn't know anything about this situation to supernaturally confirm it. Here's another issue. How do other mature Christians feel about it? How do other mature Christians feel about it? And then this question, do I have a peace concerning this decision? Do I have a peace concerning this decision? Because peace is the greatest single indication that you're in the will of God. If you make a decision that seems like it's good on the surface, everything seems right, but something doesn't, it sort of scratches you on the inside, you don't quite feel right about it, it's amazing. And then I would give you this advice before making major decisions. Before making major decisions, study the words and the deeds of Christ in order to get the mind of Christ. Study the words and the deeds of Christ. Study not only what he said, but study what he did. He was moved with compassion and he healed them. Study not only what he said, study what Jesus did in order to get the mind of Christ. Secondly, I would say ask God for wisdom. He gave us that as an option for us in James chapter 1 verse 5. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. Let her ask of God. Ask God for wisdom. Ask God for wisdom. Here's the third thing that I would say, research. Explore your options. Explore your options. You need data to help you to make some decisions. The need, is there a need for it? God's not sending you to be an answer for something for where there is no need. No need in scratching something that doesn't itch. Is there a need for it? Or what are the risks that are involved? What are the obstacles here? Research it, find out what you're getting into. That's a part of counting the cost. And then I would say seek counsel from others who have gone before you. Seek counsel from others who have gone before you. Just take the time and seek the counsel. Somebody else has done it, you're not the first. You probably won't be the last. But seek the counsel, you'll get the mind of God. And then I want you to realize this. Before you set goals, determine your values. Before you set goals, determine your values. Before you set goals, determine your values. What are your values? What are your values? There are a lot of people that go into wanting to be an entrepreneur, to be their own business person, but it's not oftentimes that they're chasing dollars. Sometimes they just want the independence, the freedom to be able to be with their family. Determine your values. Values should be the foundation of your decision. Values or principles. And I would say this to you, always ask the purpose question in every major decision that you make. Always ask the purpose question, because purpose will do some things. Let me give you a few things. Purpose will motivate you when you got the right purpose. When you understand that this is purpose and I'm serving Jesus, purpose will motivate you. Purpose will keep your priorities straight. Purpose, it will keep your priorities straight. Purpose will develop your potential. Purpose will give you power to live in the present. Purpose. And purpose will help you to evaluate your progress. You don't know how well you're doing if you don't have a purpose. What's your purpose? Purpose will motivate you. It'll keep your priorities straight. It will develop your potential, and it will give you power to live in the present and help you to evaluate your progress. So always ask the purpose question with whatever it is that you're doing. And realize this principle: decisions demand action. Decisions demand action. Decisions demand action. I love this quote by my namesake, Dale Carnegie. Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit home and think about it. Go out and get busy. I love practical, what you would call horse sense. I really do. So it says, just don't, if you need something, don't just sit at home and think about it, because decision demands action. Decision demands action. Decision demands action. I've taught you before the word decision from an etymological standpoint. De means off, sis means to cut, shon means the state of. Decision is the state of cutting off. Every time you make a decision, you are cutting off other options that are not relevant to your life and to that decision, to that purpose. You're cutting it off. It's always about cutting something, cutting something. Decision. What needs to be cut off? When you make a decision, decision brings you up to a focal point. And you cannot have a focus without cutting off stuff that is irrelevant to that focus. So every time that you make a decision, when a man makes a decision to marry a woman, he is cutting off the option. He's cutting off the option. My wife and I are in our 36th year of marriage. And when I made that decision to be with one woman, I could only have one. And so in all of my life, I've only known that one woman because of a decision, the state of cutting off. Now, incision, the state of cutting in. Excision, you excise cancer. It has to be excised, the state of cutting out. Circumcision, the state of cutting around. But when I need to make a decision, something needs to be cut off. Decision. When God challenges you to make a decision, you got to cut something off. There's something that you must put away. Something that you must cut off. When you make a decision, what are you cutting off? Snip, snip. What are you cutting off? Something has to be cut when you make a decision. Whether you're being chosen for a basketball team, a football team, a soccer team, sometimes they said that you didn't make the cut. Because when you're deciding on building your team, something has to be snip, snip, cut. A decision, the state of cutting off. D off, sis to cut, shon, the state of cutting off, decision. You're cutting off something that is hindering you. You're cutting off something. You're cutting off something. And listen, there are times that God will let you cut off, we call it pruning, not to hurt you, but to promote greater growth in the future. So God will cut something back. That decision to prune is a decision to make you more productive down the road. And I'm so grateful to God for that. But all change begins with a decision. All change begins with a decision. All change begins with a decision. And you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can always decide now and create a brand new ending. Just make a decision. In Joshua chapter 24, verse 14 again, now therefore fear the Lord, serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away, snip, snip, cut the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the river and in Egypt. Serve the Lord, serve the Lord, serve the Lord. It's what you decide to do differently that actually makes you different. And my question to you is, what's distracting you? What do you need to put away in order for you to serve God? What decisions will you make? What decisions? God brings us to a focal point of becoming effective and focused in life because we make a decision. What decision will you make about your faith? What decision will you make about your family? What decision will you make about your finances? What decision will you make about your fitness? It's not until you get to a certain age that you'll hate that you didn't take better care of yourself. What decision will you make about your future? What decision will you make about your friends? It's all about decisions. And the quality of those decisions will impact your destiny. Your decisions impact your destiny. Now let me give you an important guideline about decision making. that whenever you live your life by principle, 99% of your decisions are already made. Whenever you live your life by principle, 99% of your decisions are already made. Can I give you a Bronnerism? Never make a decision that violates your conscience. Never make a decision that violates your conscience. Never make a decision that violates your conscience. And let me say this to you, that sometimes the right decision is not an easy decision. In fact, it may feel wrong. The right decision is not always the easy option. Oftentimes, the right decision will hurt like the dickens. It may hurt someone's feelings for a moment, but it'll save their destiny in the future. So, all decisions have consequences, present and or eternal. All decisions have consequences. And with the freedom of decision making comes responsibility for that. Because I want you to understand this principle very carefully. You have the right to make your own decisions, but you do not have the right to choose the consequences. You have the right to make your own decisions. Baby girl, you can think and decide whatever you want to do, but you don't have the luxury of choosing the consequences. The consequences are already predetermined. You can choose the pain of discipline and restraint, or you choose the pain of regret and shame. You do have a choice. You do have a choice. You do have a choice. And my question to you is, when things happen in this world, how will you respond? How will you respond? Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 19 talks about that when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. You ever have a flood come into your life where you're flooded with a variety of issues? You don't just deal with one thing happening at the time. It's not only your health, it's your health and your children and your spouse and your money and your family. I mean, it just happens. It just comes in like a flood. And then something happens to your car, and then to the washing machine. And then this floods, and then this is leaking. And the toilet is running over, and and then your edges are coming out. I mean, when the enemy comes, he just starts flooding in on you. And then you get too big to wear your favorite clothes. I mean, But when the flood comes, you have options. When the flood comes, you have options. You can change the environment, which means get the water out. Get the water out. Here's the second thing, change the environment in another sense is get out of the water. Think of yourself as being a boat. Change the environment, get out of the water. You see a storm coming, get out of the water. And here's the third thing, be changed by the environment, learn to swim. Learn to swim. Learn to swim. Learn to swim. And so I want you to realize that even when the enemy comes in like a flood, you still have options. Whenever you're dealing with a flood or storm, you have options. You have options. Choose you this day. Choose you this day. And make a decision to focus on the promises over your life rather than the problems in your life. There are promises that God has given to you. Make your focus on the promises of God. He has promised you that with His stripes you're healed. Focus on the promises and not the problems in your life. He has promised you that you'll be the head and not the tail. Above only and not beneath. He's promised you joy unspeakable and full of glory. He's promised you, So when you trust in Him, focus on the promises over your life and not the problems in your life. Let me give you a few things to remember about decision making. Number one, seek the Lord in prayer and His Word. Seek the Lord in prayer and His Word. Number two, with every decision, there are consequences. Number three, you have the right to choose, but not the right to decide the consequences. Number four, every righteous choice will be challenged by the devil. Every righteous choice will be challenged by the devil. Number five, your decisions will only be as good as your information. Your decisions will only be as good as your information. That's why you get research. You research, get the data. Your decisions will only be as good as your information. The data is the steering wheel for your organization. You don't make decisions in the blind. You make them based on information that you have. Number six, get input from others you trust. Get input from others that you trust. And number seven, don't vacillate. When you're making a decision, Don't be one day yeah and the next day no. One day yeah, the next day no. One day yeah, the next day no. And let me remind you of this. Don't leave God out of your decisions. Don't leave God out of your decisions. Don't leave God out of your decision. Isaac was deceived by his son Jacob because he never consulted God. He said, it feels like Esau. He trusted his feelings. And he was deceived because of his feelings. Jacob got deceived by Laban. He never sought the Lord. He trusted his instinct, his craftiness, and he got tricked. King Asa sought doctors about the disease that was in his feet, and the Bible says he died, not because he sought doctors, but it said that he did not seek the Lord in that whole process. He sought the physicians, but never the Lord. You read about it yourself in the 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 12 and 13. He sought the doctors. It was not a sin to seek a doctor. It's a sin to seek a doctor only, and you don't seek God about it. You better pray and say, Lord, show me the right doctor. And you say, Lord, I want you to guide my doctor's hand. Guide their hand, guide their feet, guide their mind. The doctors have shown up to surgery intoxicated. You'd be surprised. You better ask, listen, there is no such a thing as minor surgery when it's on you. Trust me. And I want you to understand this principle. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. You can make all the decisions that you want. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his step. That was a Scottish farmer by the name of Mr. Clark. He had this dream of being on the maiden voyage of a luxury, brand new cruise liner. And he took his whole life savings for he and his wife and their 5 children to be on the maiden voyage of this luxury cruise liner. And they got on at Southampton, England, getting ready for this maiden voyage. And all of a sudden, before they could even board the ship, a week prior to that, Mr. Clark's son, one of his 5 children, was bitten by a dog. They took him to the doctor. The doctor said the boy needs to be quarantined, not only for his own health and safety, but for the safety of others around. Said, you can't take a cruise. So Mrs. Clark said, honey, why don't you take the other 4 children and you all go on the cruise that you've paid for it, and it's non-refundable. He had taken his life savings to be able to make this maiden voyage on this brand new luxury cruise liner. And there he was. Time to take the cruise. And he had a sick boy at home. And something in his conscience said, I can't leave my wife and my sick son here, and I take the other 4 children, even though this is non-refundable. And he went down to the dock and watched the voyage up there on April the 10th, 1912. He cried as he watched the ship sail off because he realized, I've got 7 reservations that I paid for and we couldn't make it. And it's non-refundable. And it was his life savings. And now broke and waving goodbye to his dreams. He was frustrated. He was disappointed. He was hurt, but he was following his conscience. And little did he know, on April the 15th, 1912, he got the news that this ship, the Titanic, had hit an iceberg and sunk. And now he understands why his boy got bitten by a dog, and why he and his wife and their 5 children were at home safe. Because a man's ways plans his heart. A man's heart plans his ways, but the Lord directs his step. And isn't it amazing that sometimes if you're trying to do something, God will let something bite you and it feels like it's bad at the moment. But God knows what he's doing. He can shift it. God can make it where you can't find your car keys, because he knows that unscrupulous person is going to run a light that could destroy your life, you don't ever know why you're running late. You better look up and say, Lord, I trust you and I thank you that even though I make my plans, God, I don't know how, but I'm just here to remind you today that your destiny can be determined by your decisions. You make a decision to follow Jesus. You make a decision. Sir Alfred, many years ago, woke up one morning and sitting at his breakfast table, he read the headlines of the newspaper that Sir Alfred, the discoverer of TNT, they thought that he had died, and they had printed his obituary erroneously in the newspaper. His brother had died, and they thought that he had died and printed his obituary erroneously. And they said, this man, he was the discoverer of TNT dynamite. And the story talked about the damage that dynamite had done all over the world. And Sir Alfred, sitting there at his breakfast table that day, reading his own obituary, said, oh my God, I don't want to be remembered this way. Says, God, help me. Show me something to be able to change how I am remembered. Well, today we know him as Sir Alfred Nobel, the founder of the Nobel Peace Prize. He didn't want to be known for causing destruction. He wanted to be known for peace. And he shifted how he is remembered today. More people today know him more for peace, the Nobel Prize, than they do from his discovering TNT dynamite. And I don't know whether you know this or not, but if you win the Nobel Peace Prize, it comes with a cash prize. I think it's over $1 million at this point. You know where that $1 million cash prize comes? It's the equity off of the money that he made from dynamite. And he took something that was destructive to the world and flipped it around and said, I'm going to award and celebrate people who use their decision-making ability to be able to promote global peace. And today, he's remembered for peace and not destruction. What decision will you make to change how you are remembered? Because decisions impact destiny. Decisions impact destiny.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. We pray that this message has encouraged, equipped, and empowered you to live a more victorious life. Join us next time for Power for Living with Dale C. Bronner, where revelation is power, power for living.